Male 49, wife Cynthia, female 45, got pregnant against my will after we had discussed and agreed on not having any more kids. We already have female 18, male 13, male 8, and male 4. I was scheduled for a vasectomy. She claimed she was on the pill, but I was using condoms because I wanted to make sure nothing happened. I had my vasectomy, but she was pregnant a few weeks later. She was overjoyed, and I wasn't. I didn't want to be an old dad. She claims the pills didn't work. I never pushed for her getting surgery because I know it's harder for women, and she said injectable contraceptives hurt her health. I checked all my condoms, and all of them had been pierced. We had a huge argument that ended with her crying. My trust has been destroyed. I assume that nothing she says is true. She also got fired when she was 3 months pregnant. I found it weird that she didn't fight it. Then she said she needed to stay home, which is exactly what I dreaded. She said morning sickness was too bad to go to work. For our entire 18 years of marriage, she has pushed to be a stay-at-home mom. We can't afford it. She gave me the silent treatment for weeks after our second was born when I said she needed to find a job. I never heard the end of it, as she calls it, when I made her leave our baby and sent her to get a job, like I had ripped her away from our kid. I got suspicious thinking that perhaps she had resigned and was lying. I know it's wrong, but I got into her phone. Long story short, she had a workplace affair, and she and her affair partner both got canned. She slept with him during her training out of state and eventually scheduled every assignment out of town to cheat with him. He is in his late 50s, married. She also slept with my cousin's son, Nelson, male 29, and he's a D addict. I saw and heard messages between them. He would come to my house when I was out. I've asked the neighbor and they confirmed. My neighbor said Nelson would show up sometimes 2 days in a row when I was out. I checked my schedule, and it could have been when I went to Ohio for 3 weeks. I came home on weekends, but everything seemed normal. What's worse is that Nelson calls me uncle. I let him stay over a couple of times. She also used our own kids, our 2 youngest, as leverage, promising that he could see them if he didn't pressure her and kept his mouth shut. So she obviously put him in some type of stepdaddy role. She told him the pregnancy was his baby. I hate him, but I think she manipulated him because he has zero relationship with his parents or siblings, and he's kept texting her about how she was like home to him. I lost it and woke her up. She tried to claim that she was taken advantage of by both men, then said she was pressured into it because they threatened her. I confronted both men. I reached out to her ex-coworker via social media, but he blocked me after a couple of exchanged messages. Nelson did get belligerent, and it could have probably ended in a real fight if I had him in front of me. The paternity test came back as negative. I moved out and got a lawyer. I refused to be at the hospital during childbirth. It was a stillborn. I was shocked. Even if it was mine, it felt dark and strange. I offered my kids emotional support, but didn't allow her to cry to me. I had to get a court order to get a DNA test on all our kids. They are mine. A few weeks ago, people on Facebook started asking questions and attempting to call me out for not posting anything about the baby. I think she might have told someone that I wasn't present at childbirth because a couple of people came at me. We're getting a divorce, and I'm very angry that she's still trying to milk it. I told each person the truth separately, but eventually got fed up with looking like the bad guy and wrote a post saying thank you to everyone who has reached out to insult me, but the baby was not my child as per the paternity test. I had to step away from social media because of it. Her family called me, asking to take it down. They didn't know the full story, but said, "This is not how things get solved." I'm not deleting it, despite being called out for S-shaming. While I was working my butt off for our family, she was texting her best friend and complaining about how I'm not the shadow of my former self, how I look old and let myself go. Her friend had an angry response, but they're not on speaking terms anymore. Cynthia claimed that her best friend ghosted her, and she doesn't know why. I'm suing for custody, since she repeatedly took my kids across the state so that Nelson could hang out with them, and left them with her dad before I came home from work so that she could go do work stuff and have S outside of our marriage. She had been begging me not to tell the kids about the paternity test, but they needed to know the truth before she twisted the narrative. My daughter won't speak to her, and our second child wants to come live with me. I'm sick of crying sporadically because sometimes I'm driving and can't hold it in. I had a family, and despite everything, I was proud and happy, and she took it away. I didn't know she saw me as less. She told her ex-best friend that she loved watching the executives in her job. At least her friend defended me, although we are not close. My lawyer says we should contact her as a character witness. I hate Cynthia, and I told her during the pregnancy when she wanted to initiate S. She's naturally overweight, and I loved her as such, but I hated the knocked up by the AP version of her. I told her she looked grotesque, like Jabba the Hutt. Her lawyer is pushing for family counseling. I would only agree to civil co-parenting, but nothing oriented at couples reconciliation BS. She calls it a mistake, but to me, she bred via infidelity and created an entire human being, and I will never forget that. Am I the a-hole for refusing to take my post down? Am I the a-hole for refusing to show compassion? All I want is to get out of her life, and I feel like she's trying to keep me from moving on. Sorry if I don't make too much sense, but my mind is still foggy. It's not S-shaming telling people your wife is having an affair. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. So long as she is spinning a false narrative, you should feel free to defend your own reputation. To anyone demanding you take that down, ask to have her post the truth instead, and you will no longer need to defend yourself. It also seems like there are many affair partners, and you have been holding back damning details you could describe. She ducking betrayed you, and the life and family you both built. Not the a-hole. Your wife's infidelity and deceit justify your anger and lack of compassion. Your social media post was a valid response to unfair judgment.
If you've read the title, then you can probably understand why my head is spinning so much right now. I, 19 female, am the product of my mom, 40 female, sleeping with her best friends, Eve, 39 female, boyfriend turned husband, Adam, 40 male. According to my mom, it only happened once, and they immediately regretted the act the next day when they were sober. They swore to never speak of this and continue living as if it never happened because they didn't want Eve to walk away from them. Around the time that my mom got pregnant with me, the flu was going around. So when she first started feeling the sickness of pregnancy, she assumed that was it. However, when the symptoms lasted for weeks, my Aunt Eve convinced her to go see a doctor and was with my mom when the doctors told her she was pregnant. Apparently, she was too far along to do anything else but have me, and Uncle Adam was upset when my mom changed her mind about adoption. It got to a point where Aunt Eve threatened to break up with him if Uncle Adam didn't stop telling my mom that she'd be a horrible mother. My mom had no familial support, so Aunt Eve and her family were there for me and my mom a lot. Hence, why I call her Aunt Eve, and she's even my godmother. I was the flower girl at Aunt Eve and Uncle Adam's wedding. I love my Aunt Eve very much and consider her a second mother. I was devastated when I found out the truth. My mom privately confessed to me while she was drunk and didn't remember it the next morning. My mom tried to play it off, but I secretly took some of Uncle Adam's DNA and sent it for testing. I angrily confronted my mom and told her what I did when she tried to deny it. Later on, Uncle Adam and my mom sat me down and apologized for what they'd done, but since he was around as my uncle growing up, that there was no real harm done, and asked me to keep the secret. When I showed hesitation, my mom brought up how awful Aunt Eve would feel at not only her best friend and husband's betrayal, but that she was able to give him the bio child Aunt Eve couldn't. My Aunt Eve survived cancer, but at the cost of her own fertility, and struggled with therapy for years over it. I didn't want to hurt Aunt Eve, so I tearfully agreed. I've been holding on to this secret since Thanksgiving, and with Christmas rolling around, I know Aunt Eve is expecting me. My mom understands that this is a lot for me and will cover for me if I decide not to speak to Aunt Eve for a while. But honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be able to talk to her again. I don't know how I can spend the rest of our lives being around her and not eventually saying something. My mom says that it's a bad idea and that there's nothing positive to gain. She said that Uncle Adam never had an interest of being my dad, so why would he be one to me if I revealed the secret and caused problems in his marriage? And that while Aunt Eve may still love me, there's no guarantee that she'll still want to be around me. I don't know what to do, so am I the a-hole for wanting to tell? Edited to add, hey, I needed to step away and take a breather, and ended up taking a nap. But I'm back and see a couple of questions both in the comments and messages, so I just wanted to add some more info. I look exactly like my mom and don't really bear any physical resemblance to Adam. At least nothing distinct, so I think that's one of the reasons why the lie was able to go as long as it did. I live in the USA, And while I can't speak for other countries, I was able to get one of those at-home paternity tests. Not that it was cheap for me, and collected a sample. Take what you will from that, as I won't give any more details on that. I don't know what I'm going to do about the secret, but I've made the decision to not see my Aunt Eve for Christmas. I just can't face her. Not the a-hole for feeling this way, but as a child of divorce after a similarly complicated family situation, I beg you not to act on impulse. It's been 20 years since their infidelity, so if you wait a few more months until you have processed this yourself, that won't change anything at this point. You didn't do anything wrong. That's important. Generally speaking, I'm for honesty if it benefits the betrayed party in some way. But if the only reason to tell is that the lying or cheating party wants to relieve their conscience, they should keep their mouths shut. That rule of thumb obviously doesn't work for you because you didn't do anything wrong at all, but still feel guilty because you're the product of betrayal. That's why I think you should wait, process this situation, ideally get some help to sort out your feelings, and then decide whether you'd be helping or only hurting Eve with the truth. The biggest a-holes here are your mom and bio dad for expecting their child to keep such a messed up secret from one of the closest people in their lives. At minimum, please tell your mom that they owe it to you to set you up with a therapist, so you can have someone proper to talk to about all of this. Not the a-hole, but the question I would ask is this: what value is there, or what outcome do you hope to achieve by telling? While I've never been in this situation, I just don't see how this will do anything but add negativity and sadness to many people's lives, including your own. That being said, it's a lot to take in and hard to keep such a big secret internalized. I would strongly suggest talking to a therapist as an outlet and to help you deal with these new feelings and thoughts. That way, you have an unbiased outlet to talk to while potentially keeping or saving your relationship with Mom, Adam, and Eve. Not the a-hole. I'm working from home. My husband isn't. We have about the same work hours. Although he routinely works 1 or 2 hours of overtime daily nowadays. He works in a hospital, desk job. In the morning, I can laze in bed 30 minutes more than him, and I'm usually done with work in the afternoon about 1 or 2 hours before he gets home. I took over most of the chores, which I do until he gets home, so we both work the same amount including chores I do. Husband hasn't done any chores in weeks now. Our house is decently clean at all times, but husband's mom is a clean freak and honestly a harpy. Can't stand that woman, but I tolerate her visits for my husband. When she comes, she will check thoroughly, literally moving furniture and checking absurd places, to see if the place is spotless, and she will give a shrill-voiced lecture if she finds anything less than perfect. I don't care about her opinion of me, but husband gets really anxious and wants her to have nothing bad to say. Usually, we both take a weekend day and scrub the place clean together all day before she comes. This time, though, she is arriving Friday night and staying the weekend. Husband asked me to do all the cleaning since I'm home all day. I said I'll clean after I'm done with my job. I'm willing to do more than usual, but not much more. Yesterday, he came home and straight to dinner, then TV while I was cleaning. I asked him to help since there's a lot of cleaning to do, but he refused because he doesn't want to come home after a long day at work and have to clean on top of it. I shot back that I had a long day at work too, and he replied that it's not the same because I am home and he's in the office. I got him to help for like 15 minutes before he announced he was tired and went back to the couch, so I stopped cleaning. I frankly don't care about mother-in-law's opinion, so I decided that I won't clean any more than usual. I feel like husband isn't appreciating the work I've been doing around the house and taking 1 or 2 hours of cleaning daily as the baseline, and assuming that I have all this spare time sitting around since I'm working from home. If he gets yelled at by his mom, it's not my problem. Does that make me the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I was prepared to trash your mother-in-law as it's only your and your husband's business who cleans and how intense. But him being anxious and yet refusing to do at least half the work, your husband's an a-hole. Edited to add. It's especially to note that, as you said, both of you did and do the cleaning usually, so that change of attitude of him is kinda suspicious. I don't think it's a change of attitude. If mother-in-law came just to visit on Saturday afternoon or Sunday as usual, husband would definitely help to clean beforehand on his day off. He just goes on and on about how tired he is after a day of work and just wants to relax. So he doesn't want to clean on weekdays. Mother-in-law is coming on Friday this time, which is unusual. Not the a-hole. If he wants the house extra clean so he won't be scolded by his mommy, he should do it himself. Working from home is working, just the same as away from home. The only thing that differs is the commute. He should either stand up to his mom or do the work himself. Not the a-hole. And hubby needs to step up and tell his mother to shut the hell up. Actually moving furniture to check behind it is clean? What the duck? That's what drill sergeants do in basic training. Do you have to stand at attention by your beds while she's inspecting as well? Tell hubby that he has to tell his mom that crap stops, or she will not be invited over. I, 29 female, and my ex-partner Daniel were together for over a decade and only split a few months ago. Within the relationship, I got pregnant 3 times but lost all 3. We had a stillborn daughter, a miscarriage in the second trimester, and another stillborn daughter. We realized this wasn't a normal pattern of pregnancies, so got medical tests done after our second stillbirth, which was our 3rd loss. Daniel's fertility and genetics were fine, but I was the one with the problem. My fertility wasn't an issue, but my womb wouldn't accommodate a full-term pregnancy, as there was no room for the baby to grow. Our first stillborn daughter had died due to a placental abruption, and our second seemed to have no apparent cause, but we realized that she most likely was starved of oxygen or something like that, as she couldn't grow any further. Getting pregnant wasn't an option, so I chose to have my eggs frozen for future use via a surrogate, and I painfully chose to get sterilized. I knew that even though we were super careful with protection, it could still fail, and by getting my tubes tied, it would prevent pregnancy 100%. Daniel and I's relationship was strained due to the fertility issues, and we sadly separated, but luckily remained friends. I also started a new job as a fresh start in this time, and it's been fine until recently the topic of babies came up. A coworker of mine announced she was pregnant, and immediately people started joking, saying I'd be next as my 30th is approaching, and they jokingly said I was running out of time, even though you can have babies well beyond 30. They also know I've had 2 stillbirths and a miscarriage, and I just said I cannot get pregnant, and I ended up revealing that I deliberately made myself infertile as I got my tubes tied at 26. Now, this shocked them all, as they said I've basically prevented myself from experiencing the joy of carrying my own child, and that by using a surrogate, I'm depriving myself and my child of a bonding, as I'd be the mother. I angrily told them I did experience the joy of being pregnant and ran away in tears. I feel like an a-hole for getting sterilized, as they've been giving me the cold shoulder recently even though it was for my health. Update. Some people have mentioned why these coworkers knew about my fertility issues. The 3 women are people I had befriended and told it to in confidence, and nobody but them know. Second update. People have mentioned HR a lot. I have discussed this situation in this thread and the comments with Daniel, who, like I mentioned earlier, I'm still friends with, in great detail as I saw him earlier. The comments have affected him too, as he lost kids too, and it's disgusting these women assume he and other fathers can't bond with a kid, as they're not the ones carrying the child. He has told me to log everything, to go to the appropriate department, and said, and I quote, "Get those witches fired." You are so not the a-hole. So much lack of a-holery on your part. Wow. Your coworkers are actual scum. Wow. I can't even wrap my head around this. You 100% didn't owe them an explanation, and the inappropriateness of their comments is just mind-boggling. Not the a-hole. You can't safely be pregnant. Then never getting pregnant again is important. An abruption can kill you. The emotional stress of having a stillbirth can kill you. You know what is the very best for you, and your coworkers can duck right off. I'm so sorry for your losses. Not the a-hole. You have genuine valid health reasons for being unable to carry out a pregnancy, and you made a painful decision for the sake of your health to prevent any further losses. Your coworkers clearly don't understand any of this and sound horrible. I hope it all goes okay for you, and I'm sorry for your losses. I've been struggling with infertility, and I'm finally pregnant. I'm currently 12 weeks along, and my husband and I were finally comfortable with telling my family. My 12-week mark happened to coincide with a planned trip to a theme park with a mouse mascot. The trip was planned for my sister-in-law's 30th birthday, and my parents, all my siblings, and some extended family were going to be there. Since it was a trip planned for my sister-in-law, Jane, I approached her and my little brother, Joe, before the trip and asked them if it would be okay. They were thrilled for us and told us yes. Jane said that her trip was an entire week and that she didn't mind sharing for something this big. She knows this has been hard for me. My sister-in-law is the nicest person on the planet and helped me plan how I was going to do everything. Jane even made me a custom pair of mouse ears with a baby rattle on the bow to wear at the park. She's really creative. We decided to do it the first day there so that I wouldn't have to dodge drinks all week and explain why I was avoiding certain rides. At lunch today, I got up and made the announcement. It was wonderful. My parents were both crying since this will be their first grandchild. Everyone went wild congratulating us. Everyone except my aunt. She just sat there kind of smiling and looking funny. After lunch, she took me aside and told me that I was wrong. She said that I was selfish to steal the spotlight from Jane on her birthday trip. My aunt dealt with infertility issues and was only able to have one child. And she said that when she got pregnant, she didn't make it all about her. I tried to defend myself and told her I had asked Jane, but my aunt said that Jane was just too nice to say no, and I was an a-hole not to realize that. She then went on a tangent about how I had always been a brat and never thought about anyone but myself. By the end of everything, I was in tears. I texted my husband that I was tired and went back to my room. My husband came back to the room with Jane and Joe because they were worried about how I left the group. It was obvious that I had been crying. I get really splotchy. When my husband found out why, he totally lost his mind. Jane reassured me that it was all right, but I'm wondering if she's just being nice. I've been so excited about the baby that maybe I'm not thinking clearly. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You did everything right, and your sister-in-law is a keeper. Having to avoid rides would have caused issues all week. Makes way more sense to start the trip with your news. Stop any speculation, and then have an amazing family trip for her birthday. Not the a-hole. You didn't pop out of her birthday cake with a giant sign screaming, "I'm having a baby, screw your birthday." It was a family trip. You cleared it with the birthday girl. All is good. Your aunt is just projecting her own issues onto Jane. Not everyone cares about these things so much. People can genuinely be happy for others and have it coincide with their happy life events. I am constantly surprised by the number of people who get offended by pregnancy announcements. Why can't your aunt just be happy and say congratulations? Why did she need to pick on you to the point of tears? A 30th birthday is not such a momentous day that the world spins around you. Most adults find themselves doing regular chores, going to work, and the actual celebration is 10 or 15 minutes long and a gift. I would be delighted to find out I had a new niece coming. It would be the best birthday present. Not the a-hole. Aunt is a bitter harpy. Update. A lot has happened in a short amount of time. My mother found out what happened and asked my aunt what the duck. It all came out. My cousin, aunt's child, just found out that they have the same fertility issue that my aunt has, except it's worse. There's very little chance she will have a pregnancy. They only found out last week and weren't ready to tell anyone. My aunt just reacted when she heard my announcement. She wasn't really thinking about Jane, but didn't want to out my cousin. My cousin was mortified. She and my aunt came to my room a little bit ago. My aunt apologized. She said that she's been feeling as though her daughter's pain is all her fault, and guilty that her daughter will never get to make the announcement I just made. I understand that fear. There was more crying, and I think we're going to be all right. I'm going to go enjoy my vacation with my family. I will probably not reply.